Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Loera, known to the world as El Chapo, meaning Shorty, is one of the most infamous criminals in modern history. As the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, he built an empire that spanned continents, trafficking billions of dollars worth of drugs and leaving behind a trail of violence and corruption that reshaped Mexico's criminal and political landscape. His daring prison escapes, his ability to evade capture for decades, and his complex personal life have turned him into both a legendary figure and a symbol of the deep-rooted failures of law enforcement and governance in Mexico. Joaquín was born on April 4, 1957 in La Tuna, a tiny village in the rugged municipality of Badiraguato, Sinaloa. This mountainous region, part of the Golden Triangle, along with Durango and Chihuahua, was known for its isolation and the cultivation of opium poppies and marijuana. Poverty was endemic, and for many families, the drug trade was the only path to survival. His father, Emilio Guzmán Bustillos, was a subsistence farmer and small-time poppy grower, known locally for his temper and heavy drinking. His mother, Maria Consuelo Loera Perez, was respected for her resilience and devotion, often described as the stabilizing force in an otherwise violent household. Guzmán grew up tending fields and selling fruit and candy to help his family survive. He received little formal education, leaving school by the 3rd grade, and as a teenager, he began cultivating his own plots of marijuana and opium poppies, selling them to local traffickers. These humble beginnings gave him an early understanding of both the economics and the ruthlessness of the drug trade. Those who knew him as a youth described him as ambitious, pragmatic, and unusually disciplined, a quiet boy with a powerful drive to escape poverty. In the 1970s, cocaine from Colombia was flooding the United States, and Mexico became the natural bridge for this trade. Young men with ambition and determination found work in the industry, and Joaquín Guzmán was one of them. Guzmán started small, driving trucks loaded with contraband for Héctor El Güero Palma, a trafficker associated with the Guadalajara Cartel, which was the most powerful criminal organization in Mexico at that time. The cartel's leader, Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, known as El Padrino, or the Godfather, was a visionary who transformed what had been a loose network of smugglers into a cohesive syndicate with a clear hierarchy, established routes, and precise accounting. Guzmán's role involved logistics, ensuring that shipments left on time and arrived safely. Failure was not tolerated. He earned a reputation as the man who could move anything. Colleagues recalled that he spoke little but observed everything. He learned how cocaine moved from Colombian producers to Mexican transporters and then to U.S. wholesalers. He understood how dollars flowed back through front companies and black market exchanges, and how strategically applied violence kept the operation running smoothly. When Félix Gallardo was arrested in 1989 for orchestrating the kidnapping and murder of drug enforcement agent Enrique Kiki Camarena, the Guadalajara cartel fractured. Guzmán saw an opportunity. The arrest scattered the old guard, leaving the cocaine trafficking routes from the Pacific coast to the U.S. border open to anyone ruthless and organized enough to claim them. Guzmán, in partnership with Héctor El Güero Palma and Ismael El Mayo Zambada, moved swiftly to establish what would become the Sinaloa Cartel, a federation that combined family loyalty, business discipline, and intimidation. Unlike the hierarchical structure of Colombia's Medellin or Cali cartels, Guzmán's organization was designed like a multinational company with regional franchises. Each faction, known as a plaza, controlled its own territory and smuggling routes, but ultimately answered to a small inner circle led by Guzmán and Zambada. This model provided flexibility. If one cell was compromised, others could continue to operate. Beneath them, lieutenants supervised production, transportation, enforcement, finance, and political protection. Engineers designed tunnels and packaging systems, accountants managed cash logistics, chemists oversaw drug synthesis, and security chiefs commanded private armies. And by the mid-1990s, Guzmán's federation employed thousands, including pilots, mechanics, lawyers, and computer specialists. El Chapo's genius was in logistics. He recognized that to dominate the drug trade, he needed to control the routes. So in Tijuana and Nogales, his engineers constructed the first long smuggling tunnels beneath the US/Mexico border. These tunnels were not crude passages. They were impressive feats of engineering, featuring reinforced shafts with lighting and ventilation that facilitated the movement of tons of cocaine and heroin beneath the desert floor. US agents later referred to them as the subways of Sinaloa. Simultaneously, Guzmán expanded into maritime and aerial transport. He acquired old DC-9 cargo planes and fishing boats, modifying them with hidden compartments. Small aircraft took off from clandestine airstrips in Sinaloa and Durango, flying to Central America, where cocaine from Colombia was received and repackaged for the US market. From there, the product traveled north by truck or train, often concealed in shipments of produce, cement, or frozen fish. Each stage of the journey was facilitated by bribery. Customs officers, police, and soldiers along the route were given quotas to look the other way. Guzmán's policy was straightforward. Anyone who could be bribed was paid, and anyone who refused disappeared. The Sinaloa Cartel's revenues soon rivaled those of major corporations. Investigators estimate that by the late 2000s, it was moving more than 400 tons of cocaine a year, in addition to heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana. To launder profits, Guzmán used front companies in agriculture, mining, real estate, and import, export firms that traded with the United States, Panama, and Spain. Cash flowed north, hidden in trucks and private jets, while clean money came back through wire transfers, shell corporations, and real estate purchases. Entire neighborhoods in Culiacán were financed by narco money. Luxury homes, car dealerships, even churches built as gestures of piety. When US banks tightened controls after 2001, the cartel adapted, using remittance services and bulk cash smuggling through airports. The Sinaloa Cartel maintained its power through systematic brutality. Guzmán's philosophy of control was based on two options: silver or lead. Those who accepted his bribes prospered, while those who refused were killed. Guzmán's reach extended through murder, torture, and intimidation. He ordered the executions of rivals, traitors, and even family members suspected of betrayal. Testimonies during his trial in the United States revealed that he personally shot rivals, buried enemies alive, and used acid or bonfires to destroy bodies. His cartel's enforcers, elite hitmen known as Los Antrax, carried out massacres, kidnappings, and public executions to assert dominance. Entire towns were controlled by his forces. Police, politicians, and journalists were routinely bribed or killed. Journalists who continued to investigate him often ended up dead, frequently with messages warning others not to write about the boss. Additionally, he expanded into human trafficking, extortion, and illegal arms smuggling, and his organization was linked to thousands of weapons smuggled from the United States into Mexico to arm his forces. DEA and Mexican intelligence agencies later uncovered that El Chapo personally authorized the assassination of police generals, mayors, and rival cartel leaders, often as part of an ongoing campaign to maintain control of smuggling corridors. To protect his empire, Guzmán invested heavily in weaponry. His lieutenants acquired assault rifles, grenade launchers, and armored vehicles through networks that stretched into the United States and Central America. But his most effective weapons were not guns, they were envelopes of cash. Bribery reached every level of Mexican society. federal police commanders, military officers, and politicians were placed on payrolls or offered business partnerships. In exchange, the cartel received intelligence on raids, access to seized shipments, and political protection. During his U.S. trial, witnesses described payoffs so large that bundles of cash had to be delivered in duffel bags. This corruption shielded Guzmán for decades. When he was cornered, someone inside the state invariably warned him first. By the 1990s, Joaquín Guzmán's cartel was engaged in conflicts on multiple fronts. In Tijuana, the Arellano Felix brothers resisted Sinaloa's encroachment on their border crossings. This feud turned cities into battlegrounds, with convoys chasing each other through the streets, ambushes outside nightclubs, and entire police units switching sides overnight. When Mexican and U.S. investigators uncovered Sinaloa's tunnels, El Chapo simply ordered the construction of new ones, deeper and longer, showcasing the adaptability that would define his reign. By the middle of the 1990s, Guzmán had emerged as the single most disruptive figure in Mexico's underworld. His cartel's rapid expansion clashed with established trafficking dynasties, leading the country to experience a series of public wars over the next decade. The Tijuana corridor, controlled by the Arellano Felix brothers, became the first major battlefield. Each side aimed to seize control of the city's international bridges and lucrative airport routes. Gunmen engaged in running battles through downtown. Corrupt police units switched allegiances, and local officials either fled or joined one of the factions. American agencies began to understand the new scale of the conflict in Mexico. These were not merely isolated smugglers, but armed groups equipped with automatic weapons, communications gear, and payrolls that rivaled those of provincial governments. Further north in Ciudad Juárez, Guzmán's network challenged the long-dominant Carrillo Fuentes family. The battle for the city's border crossings would ultimately claim thousands of lives. In each confrontation, El Chapo adhered to a key principle that governed his business: diversification. If one route was closed, another would open. When access to Tijuana became too costly, he shifted his focus to Sonora and Sinaloa, then further into Chihuahua, consistently bribing local officials to ensure safe passage. To keep the machinery turning, Guzmán built a double safety net: an intelligence apparatus inside law enforcement, and a patronage system that reached deep into politics. Former policemen became informants. Military officers provided convoy escorts or advance notice of raids. Governors and mayors accepted donations for public works financed with laundered money. At the federal level, investigators later testified the cartel paid millions in bribes for information on extradition requests and DEA investigations. One protected witness at his U.S. trial described meeting envelopes of cash labeled simply for the government. The amounts were large enough to buy silence at every checkpoint from Sinaloa to the border. The more his name appeared in headlines, the more Guzmán's legend grew. Folk singers in the Sierra composed ballads portraying him as the clever outlaw who outwitted corrupt politicians. In reality, he had become one of them, a man whose fortunes depended as much on bureaucrats' signatures as on gunmen's bullets. By 1993, however, his reach had made him too visible. In May of that year, a shootout erupted at Guadalajara's international airport between Guzmán's gunmen and a rival squad from the Tijuana cartel. In the confusion, a prominent Catholic cardinal, Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo, was killed, apparently mistaken for Guzmán himself. The killing shocked the country and forced a government crackdown. Guzmán fled across the southern border, but within weeks, Guatemalan police, tipped off by U.S. agents, arrested him. After being extradited to Mexico, Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán was sentenced to 20 years in the maximum security Puente Grande prison. Officially, he was cut off from his organization. However, in reality, he managed it even more efficiently than before. Guards facilitated his communications by delivering messages, phones, and orders. daily visitors brought him food and updates, while officials at every level were paid to ignore the situation. He created a miniature version of his outside world within the prison's walls, establishing a hierarchy among inmates and guards, maintaining a steady cash flow, and even arranging for occasional visits from entertainers. Intelligence files later revealed that entire shifts of prison staff were on his payroll. From his cell, Guzmán directed shipments, resolved disputes among his lieutenants, and orchestrated assassinations of rivals outside the prison. By 2001, Guzmán had spent 8 years at Puente Grande. Rumors about a potential transfer to another facility and possibly to U.S. custody began to circulate. Then, on the night of January 19th, he disappeared. The official account stated that he was hidden inside a laundry cart and wheeled through a service gate. Later investigations suggested that he walked out with the help of senior administrators who disabled cameras and falsified logbooks. Regardless of the method, the escape was clearly an inside job. It cost millions in bribes and involved more than 70 employees. By dawn the next morning, Guzmán was free, driven north in a convoy of loyal guards. When the news broke, it embarrassed the government of President Vicente Fox and confirmed what many Mexicans already believed. The state had lost control of its prisons and perhaps its sovereignty. From the mountains of Sinaloa, El Chapo re-emerged stronger than before. The decade that followed would make his cartel the most powerful criminal organization on earth. When Joaquín Guzmán emerged from Puente Grande in 2001, he entered a transformed Mexico. President Vicente Fox's democratic reforms had undermined the traditional patronage networks that had once kept drug cartels in check. Police forces were fragmented, governors were competing for power, and corruption, which had previously been centralized, was now available to the highest bidder. In this power vacuum, El Chapo stepped in, armed with the financial means to buy off anyone. Within months, the Sinaloa Cartel was reorganized. Ismael El Mayo Zambada became co-director. The Beltran Leyva brothers took charge of security and assassinations, and Ignacio Nacho Coronel oversaw methamphetamine production. This new structure resembled a corporate board, with each lieutenant managing a portfolio of states and drug routes. It was more agile than its rivals and was ruthless in defending its markets. Throughout the 2000s, the Sinaloa Cartel extended its reach far beyond Mexico's borders. It established direct supply agreements with Colombian and Peruvian producers, eliminating intermediaries. Its brokers in Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands opened distribution lines across Europe. Containers of fruit, coffee, and even coal transported cocaine across the Atlantic, while methamphetamine shipments moved through Asia to Australia, where a kilogram fetched 3 times the price found in the US later. DEA analysts estimated that the Sinaloa Cartel's annual turnover exceeded $3 billion. The organization's accountants funneled cash through Panamanian banks, US shell companies, and Hong Kong trading houses. Bulk cash also moved physically. Couriers drove north with cars packed full of shrink-wrapped cash, while armored trucks transported clean pesos south, all under the protection of bribed officials. While cocaine remained the cartel's flagship product, methamphetamine turned it into a manufacturing empire. Using precursor chemicals imported through Mexican ports such as Lázaro Cárdenas and Manzanillo, Sinaloa chemists built industrial-scale laboratories hidden in warehouses and ranches. These super labs could produce several tons of crystal meth a week, destined mainly for the United States and East Asia. The margins were astronomical. Raw materials worth a few $1,000s yielded millions in profit. The meth boom also deepened corruption. Customs officials, naval officers, and politicians received regular payments to allow chemical imports to pass unchecked. When Mexico restricted pseudoephedrine sales in 2008, Guzmán's chemists quickly developed new synthesis methods, proof of a scientific arm inside the cartel as sophisticated as its financial wing. prosperity led to paranoia. In 2008, the Beltran Leyva brothers, enraged by the arrest of one of their own, accused El Chapo of betrayal and severed ties with him. This defection sparked one of the bloodiest internal conflicts in modern Mexican history, turning cities like Culiacan, Mazatlan, and Acapulco into battlegrounds. At the same time, the Sinaloa Cartel faced off against Los Zetas, a paramilitary organization composed of former elite soldiers. The Zetas employed brutal tactics, such as kidnappings, public executions, and mass intimidation that forced Guzmán to militarize his operations. His forces equipped themselves with 50 caliber rifles, rocket-propelled grenades, and armored vehicles. Battles frequently raged for hours, leaving towns under siege while the federal government, outgunned and outmaneuvered, looked on helplessly. As his empire grew increasingly violent, Guzmán sought to cultivate an image as a benefactor. In the mountains of Sinaloa, he funded schools, churches, and clinics, and distributed food during difficult seasons. Locals referred to him as El Señor, the man who provided what the government failed to deliver. He exploited this loyalty for protection. Farmers acted as lookouts, and entire villages would alert each other to army patrols using radio signals or fireworks. Guzmán married 3 times and had at least 10 children. His first wife, Maria Alejandrina Salazar Hernandez, came from a respected local family in Badiraguato. They married in the late 1970s, before his rise to power, and had 3 sons. His second wife, Griselda Lopez Perez, became publicly known in the 1990s when U.S. agencies traced several of her companies and properties back to money laundering operations. She was briefly detained in 2010 but released for lack of evidence. With her, Guzmán had 4 more children, all of whom grew up within the cartel's inner circle. The third and most famous wife, Emma Coronel Aispuro, was a former beauty pageant contestant from Durango. She met Guzmán when she was a teenager, and they married in 2007 when he was already a fugitive in his 50s. They had twin daughters, Imali and Maria Joaquina, born in Los Angeles in 2011. Emma's loyalty was unwavering. She visited him during both of his imprisonments and later faced U.S. charges for assisting in his communications. After serving a short sentence, she was released in 2023, still defending him publicly as a loving father and a loyal man. For all his brutality, those close to Guzmán often described a domestic side. He enjoyed northern-style music, horses, and elaborate parties. He built ranches complete with private zoos and lakes stocked with fish. Yet his homes were temporary. Every safe house functioned as a bunker, each with hidden doors and tunnel exits. Family dinners could suddenly end with a flight into the mountains if he suspected a raid. Those who dealt with him recalled a man who embodied both fatalism and calculation. He prayed before meals, carried a saint's medallion in his pocket, and surrounded himself with fortune tellers and healers. He could be courteous to visitors, generously tipping servants, yet order a killing with the same calm demeanor. Associates noted that he slept lightly, always keeping a rifle nearby and changing phones and vehicles daily. The contradictions in his life ran deep. He poured money into good causes, while his drug shipments contributed to addiction in entire neighborhoods abroad. After 13 years as a fugitive, Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán's fortune began to change. In February 2014, a joint U.S.-Mexican task force traced a series of encrypted phones to a beachfront condominium in Mazatlan. At dawn on the 22nd, Mexican Marines broke down the door and arrested Guzmán, who was found in a white undershirt and unarmed, next to his young wife, Emma Coronel Aispuro. The capture occurred without violence and was initially celebrated as a triumph. President Enrique Peña Nieto declared that Mexico had shown it was capable of overcoming impunity. However, few people in Sinaloa believed that the situation would remain stable for long. authorities transferred El Chapo to the maximum security Altiplano prison near Mexico City, which was specifically designed to prevent escapes like the one from Puente Grande. The cells were monitored by cameras, and the only blind spots were the showers. Guzmán appeared compliant. He was polite to the guards and quiet in demeanor, but outside, his engineers and bribed officials were hard at work. On the night of July 11, 2015, surveillance footage captured him pacing in his cell and bending near the shower before disappearing. Beneath the floor, a narrow shaft descended 30 feet to a tunnel that stretched over a mile long. This tunnel was equipped with electric lights, ventilation, and a small motorcycle mounted on rails. It emerged inside a half-built house in the nearby farmland. The entire project had taken nearly a year, cost millions, and could not have succeeded without inside cooperation from the prison. By the time guards raised the alarm, Guzmán was already miles away. His escape humiliated the Peña Nieto administration and captivated the world. Mexico's most notorious criminal had vanished once again. Six months later, intelligence units intercepted communications indicating that Guzmán was negotiating film rights to his life story through actress Kate Del Castillo and visiting American actor Sean Penn. This vanity proved fatal. On January 8, 2016, Marines raided a house in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. After a firefight that left several of his guards dead, Guzmán fled through a sewer but was captured on a nearby highway. "Mission accomplished," the president tweeted, echoing the phrase used after the 2014 arrest. This time, few laughed. In January 2017, Mexico extradited Guzmán to the United States. His trial in Brooklyn 2 years later unfolded like a window into a parallel state. Witnesses described billions in drug shipments, assassinations of rivals, and systematic bribery of Mexican officials, including police chiefs and generals. The evidence was overwhelming. In February 2019, a federal jury convicted him on all counts: drug trafficking, money laundering, and participation in a continuing criminal enterprise. He received a life sentence plus 30 years and was sent to the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, where he remains to this day under permanent isolation. El Chapo's conviction in 2019 did not end the Sinaloa Cartel. Instead, power shifted to his longtime partner, El Mayo Zambada, and his sons, Ivan Archivaldo, Jesus Alfredo, Ovidio, and Joaquín Guzmán López. Collectively known as Los Chapitos, they modernized the organization by investing heavily in synthetic drugs, particularly fentanyl, which requires significantly less territory to produce than opium fields. U.S. authorities now consider them central figures in the global fentanyl crisis. Their operations remain focused in Culiacán, where Guzmán's name still inspires loyalty. In January 2023, Mexican forces captured Ovidio Guzmán after a fierce clash that paralyzed the city, serving as a reminder that the cartel's power endures beyond its founder. Since his imprisonment, the figure of El Chapo has transitioned from reality into folklore. Ballads sung in bars and shared on social media praise his cunning and generosity, and television series and documentaries dramatize his escapes as if they were Hollywood heists. To some Mexicans, he still represents resistance against corrupt elites. To others, he symbolizes the very corruption that has undermined the country's institutions. His name is synonymous with the global economics of drugs, the continuous cycle of supply, demand, and prohibition that allows figures like him to thrive. Analysts often note that the Sinaloa Cartel, despite decades of arrests, still operates largely intact, demonstrating that the system which created El Chapo remains untouched. The man who created it all now languishes in ADX Florence, Colorado. Guzmán lives in a concrete cell no larger than a small bedroom. He eats alone, exercises alone, and spends 23 hours a day without any human contact. Letters and visits are strictly regulated, and the man who once commanded armies of smugglers now measures time by the slow rhythms of prison routines. Yet his story refuses to fade. Each new arrest of a lieutenant and each shipment intercepted at a port revives his name in the headlines. Experts debate whether he was a genius of logistics or merely the most visible face of a larger system. What is certain is that his life has revealed how poverty, corruption, and the global appetite for drugs can combine into a power greater than any single government. Guzmán's journey from a barefoot farmer's son in the Sinaloan mountains to the leader of a multi-billion-dollar criminal empire serves as both a biography and a cautionary tale. It illustrates how a man with little education but immense determination could exploit geography, economics, and fear to his advantage. It also shows how a state too weak to deliver justice could become his accomplice, and even in defeat, how his legend could outlast him. Behind the myth lies the reality he helped shape, a world where crime became business, and in turn, business became power. Although El Chapo's life ended in a prison cell, the system that created him endures, quietly operating beneath the surface of nations, ready for the next shorty to take his place.